Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius faced assassination attempts, betrayal by closest allies, and constant political manipulation, yet remained unshaken. Today we're exploring 14 powerful Stoic strategies he used to handle toxic people, including one counterintuitive approach that completely neutralizes manipulation. Think of the most draining person in your life right now. By the end of this video, you'll have a complete toolkit to transform that dynamic. Strategy number 1, the discipline of perception. What if toxic people's worst behavior was actually a window into their own suffering? Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that when someone wrongs you, they're really imprisoning themselves in ignorance and pain. Their cruelty becomes a cage they can't escape, while your peace remains untouchable. This fundamental shift transforms you from victim to observer. The Roman emperor understood that toxic people are trapped in their own mental prisons. When your coworker spreads gossip about you, they're revealing their own insecurity and lack of fulfillment. When a family member constantly criticizes your choices, they're projecting their own disappointments and fears. Their behavior has nothing to do with your worth and everything to do with their internal struggle. Marcus Aurelius practiced this discipline daily during his reign, especially when dealing with senators who plotted against him. Instead of taking their betrayals personally, he saw them as people corrupted by their own ambitions and fears. This perspective didn't make him naive. He still took protective measures, but it kept his inner peace intact. To implement this strategy, start by questioning your automatic reactions. When someone treats you poorly, ask yourself, what pain or fear might be driving this behavior? This doesn't excuse their actions, but it removes the emotional sting. You begin to see toxic behavior as a symptom of their dysfunction, not a reflection of your value. Practice this mental shift consistently, and you'll find that toxic people lose their power to disturb your equilibrium. Their words and actions become mere noise that can't penetrate your inner fortress of wisdom. Strategy number 2, emotional firewall technique. Picture your mind as a fortress with impenetrable walls that only let in what serves you. Stoics called this the discipline of desire, controlling what affects your inner state. When toxic people launch verbal attacks or emotional manipulation, your firewall automatically filters out the poison while keeping useful information. You become like water. Their negativity flows right through without changing your essential nature. Marcus Aurelius developed this technique during his military campaigns, where he constantly dealt with unreliable allies, corrupt officials, and enemy psychological warfare. He learned to create mental barriers that protected his decision-making abilities while remaining open to legitimate feedback and useful intelligence. The emotional firewall works through conscious filtering. When someone speaks to you with anger, manipulation, or contempt, you extract any factual information while discarding the emotional packaging. If your boss criticizes your work with unnecessary harshness, you focus on the specific feedback about improvement while ignoring the disrespectful delivery. This isn't suppressing emotions. It's choosing which emotions deserve your attention. To build your firewall, practice the pause technique. When someone triggers you, take a mental step back and ask, what's the message here and what's just emotional noise? Train yourself to respond to the message while remaining unmoved by the delivery method. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Start small with minor irritations, a rude cashier, an impatient driver, or a passive-aggressive email. Practice filtering their behavior through your firewall, keeping what's useful and discarding what's toxic. Over time, this becomes automatic, and you'll find that even the most skilled manipulators can't penetrate your emotional defenses. Your inner peace becomes unshakable because you control the gateway to your mind. Strategy number 3, the gray rock method. Ever notice how predators lose interest when prey becomes boring? The gray rock method makes you as uninteresting as possible to energy vampires. You respond with minimal emotion, give short answers, and avoid sharing personal details that could be weaponized against you. Marcus Aurelius mastered this during Senate meetings with his enemies, becoming strategically invisible to toxic attention. This strategy works because toxic people feed on emotional reactions. They thrive on drama, conflict, and the power they feel when they can manipulate your emotions. When you become as exciting as a gray rock, neutral, unresponsive, and predictable, they quickly lose interest and move on to more reactive targets. The emperor used this technique masterfully with senators who opposed his policies. Instead of engaging in heated debates or showing frustration, he would acknowledge their points with neutral phrases like, "I understand your perspective," or "That's an interesting point." He shared no personal opinions that could be twisted against him later, revealed no emotional investment in their approval, and maintained perfect composure even under direct attack. To implement the gray rock method, practice these key behaviors. Keep conversations short and factual. Avoid sharing personal information, especially your struggles, successes, or future plans. Respond to provocations with neutral phrases like "okay," "I see," or "that's your choice." Don't defend yourself against unreasonable accusations. Gray rocks don't argue. Show minimal facial expressions and body language changes. This doesn't mean becoming a doormat. You still maintain your boundaries and protect your interests, but you do so without providing the emotional reactions that toxic people crave. Think of it as starving their need for drama. When they realize they can't get a rise out of you, they'll typically move on to someone who provides more entertainment. The gray rock method is particularly effective with narcissists, energy vampires, and people who thrive on creating chaos in others' lives. Strategy number 4, reverse psychology mastery. Toxic people thrive on predictable reactions. Your anger, defensiveness, or desperation feeds their sense of control. What happens when you respond with unexpected calm or even gratitude? A manipulator expecting you to argue suddenly finds themselves disarmed when you thank them for their feedback. Their entire strategy crumbles when you refuse to play their game. Marcus Aurelius understood this principle deeply. When faced with criticism or attacks from political rivals, he often responded with appreciation rather than defensiveness. This wasn't sarcasm or passive aggression. It was genuine recognition that their opposition helped him strengthen his own positions and character. This unexpected response often left his enemies confused and powerless. The psychology behind this strategy is simple. Toxic people rely on your predictable emotional reactions to maintain control. They know exactly which buttons to push to make you angry, sad, or defensive. When you respond in completely unexpected ways, you disrupt their entire playbook and force them to confront their own behavior instead of managing your reactions. Here's how to apply reverse psychology effectively. When someone criticizes you harshly, thank them for caring enough to share their perspective. When someone tries to make you jealous, express genuine happiness for their success. When someone attempts to guilt trip you, acknowledge their feelings without accepting responsibility for them. When someone tries to start an argument, agree with any valid points they make while ignoring the inflammatory delivery. This approach requires genuine emotional detachment. You can't fake this technique. You must truly reach a state where their opinion doesn't determine your worth or emotional state. Marcus Aurelius achieved this through years of philosophical practice, learning to value his own integrity above external validation. The result is profound. Toxic people lose their primary weapon against you, and often begin questioning their own behavior when met with unexpected kindness and strength. This strategy transforms conflicts into opportunities for demonstrating your character, while neutralizing their ability to manipulate you. Strategy number 5, the circle of control. Imagine drawing a circle around everything you can actually influence: your thoughts, actions, and responses. Everything outside that circle, including toxic people's behavior, belongs to them entirely. Marcus Aurelius spent years perfecting this mental exercise during the Germanic Wars, where he faced countless variables beyond his control. You waste zero energy on what you can't control, and this single shift eliminates 90% of your frustration. This concept, fundamental to Stoic philosophy, recognizes that most of our suffering comes from trying to control things that are inherently beyond our influence. We exhaust ourselves attempting to change other people's attitudes, force them to see our perspective, or make them treat us with respect. The emperor learned that his power lay not in controlling others, but in perfecting his own responses to whatever they chose to do. Marcus Aurelius faced rebellious generals, corrupt governors, and even his own son's poor choices. In each case, he focused entirely on his own duties and responses, while accepting that others would make their own decisions. This didn't make him passive. He still took appropriate action when necessary, but he never wasted energy on anger or disappointment about things he couldn't change. To implement the circle of control, start by clearly identifying what you can and cannot influence in any situation involving toxic people. You can control your words, your actions, your boundaries, your emotional responses, your presence or absence, and your level of engagement. You cannot control their behavior, their emotions, their choices, their opinions of you, their willingness to change, or their treatment of others. When dealing with toxic people, constantly redirect your energy toward your circle of control. Instead of trying to make them understand your perspective, focus on clearly communicating your boundaries. Instead of attempting to change their behavior, concentrate on protecting yourself from its effects. Instead of hoping they'll apologize or improve, invest your energy in your own growth and the relationships that nourish you. This strategy is liberating because it returns your power to you. You stop being a victim of circumstances and become the architect of your own experience within any situation. Strategy number 6, strategic detachment. Think of yourself as a scientist observing fascinating but dangerous specimens. You can engage with toxic people when necessary while maintaining complete emotional distance. Their drama becomes mere data points rather than personal attacks. Marcus Aurelius treated even his adopted brother Lucius Verus's betrayals with this clinical detachment. Engagement without investment is true power. Strategic detachment doesn't mean becoming cold or uncaring. It means maintaining your emotional equilibrium while dealing with difficult people. The emperor mastered this during his co-rule with Lucius Verus, who was known for his hedonistic lifestyle and political unreliability. Despite their close relationship, Marcus Aurelius learned to work with Verus professionally, while protecting himself from the emotional chaos that surrounded his adoptive brother. This strategy requires developing what psychologists call observer self, the part of your consciousness that can watch your experiences without being overwhelmed by them. When a toxic person tries to provoke you, your observer self notices the attempt while your emotional self remains calm and protected. You can acknowledge what's happening without being consumed by it. To develop strategic detachment, practice mental distancing techniques. Imagine watching the toxic interaction from above, as if observing a play or movie. What would you advise the person in your position? How would you analyze the toxic person's behavior if you were a neutral third party? This perspective helps you respond wisely rather than reactively. Marcus Aurelius also used temporal distancing, imagining how the current conflict would matter in 10 years, or how a wise person from the future might view the situation. This technique immediately reduces the emotional intensity of toxic encounters and helps you maintain your long-term perspective. Another key aspect is emotional compartmentalization. You can care about your work, your goals, and your responsibilities while remaining detached from toxic people's opinions and drama. This isn't suppression. It's conscious choice about where to invest your emotional energy. The emperor cared deeply about Rome's welfare while remaining detached from the political games and personal attacks that came with leadership. Strategic detachment allows you to function effectively in toxic environments without absorbing their poison. You become like a skilled diplomat who can navigate hostile territory while keeping their mission and values intact. Strategy number 7, the mirror principle. Here's where most people get toxic relationships wrong. They try to change the other person instead of reflecting their energy back neutrally. When someone brings negativity, you mirror their tone and energy level without adding your own emotions to the mix. A shouting person gets calm, measured responses that force them to confront their own behavior. The mirror never gets angry at what it reflects. Marcus Aurelius used this principle extensively in his role as emperor and judge. When faced with angry petitioners, emotional senators, or aggressive foreign diplomats, he would reflect their concerns back to them with perfect calmness and clarity. This technique often caused people to hear their own words and moderate their behavior naturally, without him having to directly criticize or confront them. The mirror principle works because it removes the emotional escalation that toxic people rely on to maintain control. When you match their energy level without adding your own emotions, you create a neutral reflection that forces them to confront their own behavior. A person screaming at a calm mirror suddenly becomes aware of their own volume and intensity. To implement this strategy effectively, focus on matching their communication style while maintaining your emotional equilibrium. If someone speaks to you with urgency, respond with equal promptness but without anxiety. If someone approaches you with criticism, reflect back their concerns with the same seriousness but without defensiveness. If someone tries to engage you in drama, acknowledge the drama while remaining personally unaffected by it. The key is neutrality. You're not trying to punish or teach them. You're simply providing an accurate reflection of their behavior. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this as acting without passion, fully engaging with the situation while remaining internally unmoved by its emotional content. This technique is particularly powerful because it often leads to natural de-escalation. When toxic people can't provoke the emotional reactions they expect, they frequently begin to question their own approach. The mirror shows them exactly what they're bringing to the interaction, often leading to self-correction without any direct confrontation from you. Practice this with low-stakes interactions first, reflecting back a store clerk's helpfulness, a colleague's enthusiasm, or a friend's concern. As you become more skilled, you'll find you can mirror even negative emotions without absorbing them, becoming a powerful tool for diffusing toxic encounters. Strategy number 8, premeditation of evils. Every morning, Marcus Aurelius mentally rehearsed dealing with difficult people he might encounter that day. This wasn't pessimism, it was preparation. When you've already visualized handling someone's manipulation or aggression, their actual behavior loses its power to surprise or derail you. Mental rehearsal creates emotional immunity, making you unshockable. The emperor's morning routine included imagining various challenges he might face. A senator attempting to undermine his policies, a general bringing news of military defeats, or citizens protesting his decisions. By mentally rehearsing his responses to these scenarios, he ensured that his actual reactions would be measured, wise, and aligned with his values rather than impulsive and emotional. This practice, called premeditatio malorum in Latin, prepares your mind for difficulty by reducing the shock value of negative experiences. When you've already considered how to handle someone's toxic behavior, you're less likely to be caught off guard and more likely to respond with wisdom and strength. To implement this strategy, begin each day by identifying the toxic people you might encounter and the challenging behaviors they typically display. Visualize yourself responding to their manipulation, criticism, or aggression with calm strength. See yourself maintaining your boundaries, protecting your energy, and staying true to your values regardless of their behavior. Mental rehearsal should be specific and realistic. If you know your coworker tends to take credit for your ideas, visualize yourself calmly addressing this behavior or protecting your contributions proactively. If you anticipate dealing with a family member who uses guilt to manipulate you, practice mentally rehearsing your calm, clear responses to their tactics. Marcus Aurelius also used this technique to prepare for worst-case scenarios: betrayal by trusted allies, personal attacks on his character, or failures in his leadership. By accepting these possibilities in advance, he reduced their power to devastate him emotionally if they occurred. This isn't about becoming paranoid or pessimistic. It's about building emotional resilience through preparation. Athletes visualize their performance before competition. Surgeons mentally rehearse procedures before operations, and Stoics prepare for life's challenges before encountering them. When you've already faced difficulty in your mind, you approach real challenges with confidence and wisdom rather than fear and reactivity. Strategy number 9, the dichotomy of action. If you're finding these strategies helpful, hit that subscribe button. We're building a community of people who refuse to let toxic behavior drain their energy. Now, here's the most liberating Stoic principle: separate your effort from the outcome. You can choose to respond with wisdom and integrity, but you can't control how toxic people react to your boundaries. Focus entirely on your process, not their response. Marcus Aurelius mastered this principle during his reign, understanding that he could control his decisions and actions as emperor, but not the results of those actions. He could choose to rule justly, but he couldn't guarantee that his subjects would appreciate his justice. He could decide to show mercy to enemies, but he couldn't control whether they would reciprocate or continue their hostility. This dichotomy is crucial when dealing with toxic people, because they often use your desire for specific outcomes to manipulate you. They know you want them to understand your perspective, respect your boundaries, or treat you fairly. When you attach your peace of mind to these outcomes, you give them enormous power over your emotional state. The freedom comes from focusing entirely on your own performance while accepting that their response is beyond your control. You can choose to communicate clearly and kindly, but you can't make them listen or understand. You can decide to maintain your boundaries consistently, but you can't force them to respect those boundaries. You can opt to treat them with dignity, but you can't compel them to reciprocate. This shift in focus transforms your entire experience with toxic people. Instead of measuring success by their reactions, you measure it by your own integrity and consistency. Did you stay true to your values? Did you communicate clearly? Did you protect your own well-being? These are the only metrics that matter because they're the only ones you can control. Marcus Aurelius applied this principle to major decisions like military campaigns, judicial rulings, and political reforms. He focused on making the best decisions he could with the information available, while accepting that the outcomes depended on factors beyond his control: weather, enemy actions, economic conditions, and the choices of others. When dealing with toxic people, this means you can invest your energy in being your best self without being frustrated by their failure to change or improve. You become process-oriented rather than outcome-dependent, which ironically often leads to better results because you're not trying to control what you can't control. Strategy number 10, virtue as armor. Marcus Aurelius believed that living virtuously made you invulnerable to external attacks. When your actions align with your values, honesty, courage, justice, wisdom, toxic people's opinions become irrelevant noise. They can't shame someone who knows their own worth. Your character becomes unassailable armor that deflects manipulation and guilt-tripping. The emperor understood that external criticism only stings when it touches on something we secretly believe might be true about ourselves. When you're living according to your deepest values and highest aspirations, other people's judgments lose their power to wound you. You know who you are and what you stand for, making their opinions merely data points rather than verdicts on your worth. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant or dismissive of all feedback. It means developing such a clear sense of your own values and such consistent alignment with those values that manipulation tactics become obviously false and irrelevant. When someone tries to shame you for a choice you made thoughtfully and ethically, their criticism reveals more about their character than yours. Marcus Aurelius faced constant criticism during his reign. Senators questioned his military strategies, citizens complained about his policies, and even philosophers criticized his philosophical writings. Yet he remained unmoved by these attacks because he knew he was acting according to his principles of duty, justice, and service to Rome. To develop virtue as armor, start by clearly defining your core values. What principles guide your decisions? What character traits do you most want to embody? What kind of person do you aspire to be? Write these down and review them regularly, using them as a compass for your choices and actions. Then, consistently align your behavior with these values, especially when it's difficult or inconvenient. Each time you choose integrity over advantage, courage over comfort, or compassion over convenience, you strengthen your character armor. You build a foundation of self-respect that can't be shaken by external criticism. When toxic people try to manipulate you through shame, guilt, or fear, your virtue becomes your shield. You can honestly say, "I acted according to my values and principles. I have nothing to be ashamed of." This isn't about perfection, it's about intention and effort. Even when you make mistakes, you can maintain your integrity by acknowledging them, learning from them, and recommitting to your values. This armor is particularly effective against gaslighting and other forms of psychological manipulation that rely on making you doubt your own perceptions and worth. Strategy number 11, the long view. Zoom out and see toxic people as temporary obstacles in your much larger life story. Marcus Aurelius ruled for 19 years and dealt with countless difficult personalities, yet his focus remained on his duty and growth. That person causing you stress today will be forgotten in 5 years, while your character development lasts forever. This perspective instantly reduces their importance. The emperor regularly practiced this temporal distancing in his personal writings, reminding himself that current frustrations and conflicts were mere moments in the grand scope of his life and the history of Rome. He wrote about viewing his problems from the perspective of the cosmos, where individual human dramas appeared as brief flickers in an infinite timeline. This long-term perspective is liberating because it reveals the true insignificance of most toxic encounters. The coworker who makes your days difficult will likely be irrelevant to your life in a few years. The family member who constantly criticizes you will eventually pass away, but the character you build while dealing with them gracefully will remain with you forever. Marcus Aurelius used this technique during the Antonine Plague, which devastated the Roman Empire during his reign. While managing this crisis, he maintained perspective by remembering that plagues had afflicted civilizations throughout history and would continue to do so long after his death. His job was to respond with wisdom and courage in his particular moment, not to solve all problems for all time. To implement the long view, regularly ask yourself, how will this situation matter in 5 years, in 10 years, at the end of my life? This question immediately puts toxic encounters in proper perspective. The drama that feels overwhelming today becomes a minor chapter in your much larger story of growth and achievement. Also practice viewing your current challenges as character-building opportunities. Each difficult person you handle with grace and wisdom makes you stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Marcus Aurelius saw his most challenging relationships as his greatest teachers, forcing him to develop patience, compassion, and strategic thinking. This perspective doesn't minimize the real impact of toxic behavior. It contextualizes it within your larger journey of personal development. You begin to see toxic people as temporary characters in your life story rather than permanent fixtures, which reduces their power to affect your long-term happiness and peace of mind. Strategy number 12, the counterintuitive gratitude. This might sound crazy, But toxic people are actually your greatest teachers in disguise. They force you to develop patience, boundaries, and emotional resilience you never knew you needed. Every difficult person you handle skillfully prepares you for bigger challenges ahead. Marcus Aurelius thanked his enemies for making him stronger, and your worst encounters become your best training ground. The emperor understood that comfort and ease don't build character, challenges do. His most difficult relationships taught him the most about leadership, patience, and wisdom. The senators who opposed him forced him to become more persuasive and strategic. The generals who questioned his military decisions pushed him to study warfare more deeply. The citizens who criticized his policies compelled him to examine his motivations and improve his communication. This perspective transforms toxic encounters from purely negative experiences into valuable learning opportunities. When someone tests your boundaries, they're teaching you to strengthen them. When someone tries to manipulate you, they're helping you develop better recognition of manipulation tactics. When someone treats you unfairly, they're providing practice in maintaining your dignity under pressure. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about this concept, noting that difficult people serve as trainers for our character development. Just as athletes become stronger by working against resistance, we become more resilient by dealing with challenging personalities. The key is to extract the lesson from each encounter while protecting yourself from the toxic behavior. To practice counterintuitive gratitude, regularly reflect on what each difficult person has taught you. Has your critical boss helped you develop thicker skin and better professional boundaries? Has your manipulative family member taught you to recognize and resist guilt trips? Has your energy vampire friend shown you the importance of protecting your time and energy? This doesn't mean tolerating abuse or staying in harmful relationships. It means recognizing that even negative experiences can contribute to your growth when you approach them with the right mindset. You can be grateful for the lessons while still protecting yourself from the teacher. The gratitude should be genuine, not forced. Focus on the actual skills and insights you've gained rather than trying to feel thankful for the pain itself. Marcus Aurelius was genuinely grateful for his challenges because he could see how they had made him a better leader and person, even though he didn't enjoy the difficulties themselves. This practice transforms your relationship with difficulty from victimhood to empowerment. You begin to see yourself as someone who grows stronger through challenges rather than someone who is damaged by them. Strategy number 13, the exit strategy. Sometimes the most stoic response is simply walking away completely. Marcus Aurelius knew when diplomatic solutions had failed and military action was necessary. You don't owe toxic people endless chances to improve or explanations for your departure. When someone consistently disrespects your boundaries despite clear communication, leaving becomes an act of self-respect. Your presence is a privilege, not a right. The emperor made this difficult decision with several close relationships during his reign, including distancing himself from childhood friends who had become corrupt and unreliable. He understood that loyalty to people who consistently chose harmful behavior was actually disloyalty to his own values and responsibilities. Sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do, for both yourself and the toxic person, is to remove yourself from the dynamic entirely. Knowing when to exit requires honest assessment of the relationship's impact on your life and growth. If someone consistently drains your energy, disrespects your boundaries, manipulates your emotions, or undermines your goals despite your best efforts to address these issues, continuing the relationship may be enabling their behavior while damaging your own well-being. The exit strategy involves several key steps. First, clearly communicate your boundaries and expectations one final time. Give the person a clear opportunity to change their behavior with specific, measurable criteria for improvement. Second, set a timeline for seeing change, usually 30 to 90 days depending on the relationship's importance. Third, if the behavior continues unchanged, implement your exit plan swiftly and completely. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of exiting with dignity and minimal drama. Don't use your departure as punishment or attempt to teach them a lesson. Simply remove yourself from the situation while maintaining your own integrity and values. This might mean changing jobs, ending friendships, going no contact with family members, or relocating geographically. The exit should be final and complete, no breaks or trial separations that leave the door open for manipulation or false hope. Toxic people often escalate their behavior when they sense you're pulling away, so be prepared for increased manipulation, guilt-tripping, or even threats. Stay committed to your decision and don't negotiate with emotional terrorism. Remember that choosing to leave toxic relationships creates space in your life for healthy ones. The energy you've been investing in managing difficult people can be redirected toward relationships and activities that nourish your growth and happiness. Strategy number 14. Recovery rituals. After dealing with toxic people, you need deliberate practices to cleanse your mental space. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal every evening to process the day's challenges and realign with his principles. Create your own recovery ritual: meditation, exercise, time in nature, or talking with trusted friends. Don't let their negative energy contaminate your inner peace overnight. The emperor understood that toxic encounters leave residual effects on your mind and emotions, even when you handle them skillfully. Without deliberate recovery practices, these effects can accumulate over time, gradually eroding your resilience and peace of mind. His evening journaling served as a daily reset, helping him process difficult interactions and return to his centered state. Recovery rituals serve several important functions. They help you process any emotions that arose during toxic encounters, realign with your values and priorities, restore your energy and inner peace, and prepare mentally for future challenges. These practices are particularly important if you must regularly interact with toxic people due to work, family, or other obligations. Effective recovery rituals are personal and should match your temperament and preferences. Physical activities like exercise, yoga, or walking in nature help discharge stress and tension from your body. Creative activities like writing, art, or music allow you to express and process emotions constructively. Spiritual practices like meditation, prayer, or reading wisdom literature help you reconnect with your deeper values and perspective. Marcus Aurelius combined several of these approaches in his daily routine. He practiced morning meditation and reflection, engaged in physical exercise and martial training, spent time in nature when possible, and wrote extensively in his personal journal. These practices helped him maintain his equilibrium despite the constant stress of ruling an empire and dealing with difficult people. The key is consistency. Make recovery a non-negotiable part of your routine, especially on days when you've had significant toxic encounters. Don't wait until you feel overwhelmed or exhausted. Practice these rituals proactively to maintain your resilience and prevent the accumulation of negative effects. Your recovery rituals should also include connecting with positive, supportive people who remind you of your worth and help you maintain perspective. The emperor surrounded himself with trusted advisors and philosophical friends who could provide wisdom and emotional support during difficult times. These 14 strategies transform toxic encounters from draining experiences into opportunities for character development. Marcus Aurelius faced some of history's most manipulative people, yet maintained his inner tranquility through these exact principles. Remember, you can't control their behavior, but you have complete power over your response.